Time for an update on British politics, and of course that begins with Prince Harry and Meghan Markle. Let's bring in Nile Gardiner here from Heritage Foundation. Niall, Bill Simmons is calling Meghan Markle and Prince Harry grifters because of how they built about $20 million from Spotify for 12 episodes of a podcast that's now been defunct. Grifters? Harry and Meghan? Grifters, Niall?
Larry, great to be on the show today. And clearly the executives at Spotify are not very impressed with Harry and Meghan after forking out, I think, around $20 million to have them do a podcast. So I have to say that, the description of Harry and Meghan, it's not very charitable, but it's actually quite accurate, really. And I do think that Meghan and Harry have really failed to deliver spectacularly on their, promise to Spotify in terms of high quality content, because clearly Spotify is not happy with what they've delivered. And I think there's a very limited market for for outright narcissism and endless whining, really, about the royal family, because that's what you get in these podcasts, basically.
Yeah, I mean, the subject matter of the podcast was called Archetypes. It was about exploding these stereotypes that society puts on women. And then Meghan Markle would interview all these very successful women who have had to struggle with these stereotypes. But they're all very successful multimillionaire women. So despite the fact that there may have been stereotypes put on them, they've overcome them. They've actually succeeded. So you're right, it did come across as whining. And now we're learning that Meghan Markle didn't even conduct a lot of the interviews. She had her staff ask the questions, they recorded the person's answer, and then she came back in and redubbed it. I'm thinking of doing that for my job from now on, Niles. It'll make my life a lot easier.
Well, I think the whole Spotify episode is it's a farce, really, and it's a circus involving Harry and Meghan at the end of the day, and clearly, I think that this is their sort of trademark, basically, promising the earth but delivering very little of any real substance, basically, and I imagine that anyone else who's thinking of doing a deal with the Duke and Duchess of Sussex is going to think twice after the Spotify debacle here. It's also, I think, a symbol of the fact that, in America, Harry and Meghan, their popularity is sinking dramatically. I think the American people have just had enough of their endless narcissism, their endless attacks on the royal family, and I think the Spotify episode is just really part of a bigger picture here, which is of the United States really just having enough altogether of the Duke and Duchess of Sussex. They really shouldn't have those royal titles either. Why on earth do they still have royal titles after all that they've done?
Yeah. Speaking of which, Niall, last time we had you on, you were trying to compel the federal government to release Harry's immigration form to see if he had told the truth about his drug usage. And I'm asking you this on the day that we've learned that the president's own son is pleading out to a deal for making false statements on an application for a firearm purchase related to his drug usage. So what's going on with Harry in that same regard?
Well, so we have sued the Department of Homeland Security for the release of Prince Harry's immigration records. DHS, the Biden administration, are refusing to release those records. They're stonewalling our freedom of information request. There will be further hearings in federal court. Ultimately, a federal judge is going to decide the issue. We believe we can win this case. We believe we're right on our side. It's in the American public's interest, I think, to have Harry's records released. We want to see whether or not he lied on his immigration application, whether or not he received preferential treatment. And so there's a big, I think, interest here in terms of transparency and accountability on the part of the U.S. administration. They're basically stonewalling our efforts. I think that we can win this in federal court, and there will be further hearings in the months ahead.
Meanwhile, back to elected politics in the UK. The Prime Minister is facing some criticisms here. Lord knows Great Britain is even more politically correct than here in the United States of America, and he was secretly recorded making some comments about the Labour leader. Let's watch.
And at the same same period of time over the period, you may have noticed Ed Davey has been very busy. Like me, you have probably seen that he was busy trying to convince everybody that women clearly had penises. And I was reflecting, you all know I am a big fan of everybody studying maths to 18. But it turns out that we need to focus on biology to 18.
I'll tell you honestly, he's actually grown in esteem from my position with that joke. But can he get away with that kind of thing? I mean, there's very much a speech police going on about issues like that in London.
Yeah, I think good for Rishi Sunak. Actually, I think his popularity has probably increased a bit following those leaked remarks, and that was a swipe actually at the leader of the Liberal Democrats there. I think that the British government's really got to fight against this transgender agenda and ideology, which is swept through British schools, for example. And I think that the British public just had enough of this far left woke ideology.
Yeah.
And so Rishi Sunak, I think, there is hinting at a more forceful British government fight back, which is about time, really. This is a Conservative government that's been in power about 13 years. They shouldn't be allowing this far left ideology to be in place in British schools. It's outrageous. Well, and I think the vast majority of the British public would agree with Rishi Sunak, though.
As we've mentioned earlier on this program, or in previous episodes of this program, the UK is actually more conservative than the US when it comes to children. They've actually pulled back on these so-called gender-affirming cares for minors. So that is a step. They're further along than we are here. That said, there's a new poll out that shows that former Prime Minister Boris Johnson, who had to leave office in a cloud of scandal, he's actually more popular still in Britain than Prime Minister Rishi Sunak. I mean, is there a chance here, Nile, that Boris could make a comeback?
Well, as the poll points out, Rishi Sunak is not as popular as Boris Johnson among Conservative supporters and voters. The grassroots of the Conservative Party still adore Boris Johnson. Boris, of course, stepped down from Parliament. He resigned as an MP. And I think that's very unfortunate, because I do think that if Boris Johnson had returned as the leader of the Conservative Party, the Conservatives could actually win the next general election. Under Rishi Sunak, it's going to be very, very hard for them to win. Boris is a very charismatic figure. He is somebody who can really energize, I think, the grassroots of the Conservative Party. I don't think Boris is going to be coming back before the next general election, but I wouldn't rule out a comeback by Boris in the future, in years to come. Boris is a Churchillian politician. Churchill made a number of political comebacks in his career. Boris Johnson argues that he can do the same. And so let's see what happens. But I would never rule out Boris Johnson, actually. I think he remains a huge figure in British politics. He has been certainly in difficult times recently, but I think he could bounce back in the future.
Churchill would kill to have Boris Johnson's head of hair, though. I mean, honestly, it's just a spectacular thing. Do you think I could get away with that look? Is this going to catch on, or is it just a Boris exclusive?
It could catch on. The Boris Johnson hair look could well catch on, I think.
God, that would be great.
On both sides of the Atlantic.
Honestly, I'm on the wrong side of the pond. I got to get over there, and then I won't have to do that. I mean, because it takes a village to make my hair look TV ready, Nile Gardiner. Thank you for joining us, as always, from the Heritage
My pleasure, Larry.
Foundation.
Thanks very much.
Great stuff. Meghan Markle. I got to try that. We're going to have Doug Blair come in here, conduct all the interviews, and then I can be sitting in the hot tub. I show up. You just splice me in for the questions. Bing, bang, boom. You would never know the difference. Meghan gets away with it. What she got that I haven't got? Don't answer that. There's more to come on O'Connor tonight.